Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to GNG LinkedIn Live segment. We did a little bit change the timing. It's something we're actually decided to explore with. And if you have any feedback for us, do let us know. We are the next few weeks going to be playing around with a little bit with the timings just to determine which timing works best for everybody. Today, we are actually going to talk about, we switched things up today just because both Gil and I have been noticing things on LinkedIn the past week due to Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen a lot of posts and comments, some that we've seen, some that we were made aware of. And a lot of it stems from people saying that this shouldn't be posted on LinkedIn, and this is not a LinkedIn matter, so don't post on LinkedIn. Yesterday, someone made me aware of a very disturbing comment made on their post about this matter was, well, people of color have a choice. They can do better and have a better life. So they're not oppressed. They're only oppressed because they choose to be, which I thought was a really disturbing comment to be made, especially on a public platform. So we decided to do our segment today on this very topic that's happening right now. Past week, we've seen the comments, you've seen it. A lot of stuff is happening right now due to this movement. So we want to have an open discussion about this, and we invite you to join in. You can type in your comments below as well and join the discussion and your viewpoints. So we're going to open up the floor and we're going to talk about why this is the perfect topic spoken about on LinkedIn. Yes, we're talking about LinkedIn, any social media for that matter of fact, and the basics behind this topic and how it relates to workplace. You know, yesterday I read an article about school boards in my district. I live in Peel. So that was very disturbing to read as well, how Black students are being treated in schools, as well as people of color students, how they're being treated. But mostly the numbers were really high for Black students of the discrimination that they face even as small as junior kindergarten. Like a grade 1, I think it was. I was reading the article, cops were called on this poor little child, 4 years old, 5 years old, and a Black kid in Peel. And they were handcuffed. Like, I was so disturbed what I read yesterday in the Toronto Star's article about the Peel region. And for every single person that I've ever come across that keeps telling me that racism doesn't exist in Canada, wake up and smell the coffee, because it does. Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Let's stop dismissing people's experiences just because they're different from yours. I'm actually very tired of this happening, even to me, over and over, happening to other people, where we're so quick to dismiss their experiences just because we didn't experience it. I don't care what color your skin is. This isn't about whites, blacks, yellow. I don't care what color your skin is. Racism exists in many forms. And guess what? It also exists in companies. It exists in workplaces, because racism is stemming from humans. Guess who works at companies? Humans. Last time I checked, there's no robots working in companies. It's actual human beings. So racism does come into the workplace, depending on who you hire. So we're going to have a very open, candid discussion about this today. You can join in the conversation by typing your viewpoints in the comment. Just want to put it out there. Just make sure it's very respectful. No hate speeches, nothing like that. But you can shed some light. You can view in. You can share your viewpoints on this matter. So once again, I'm going to open the floor with Gail weighing in on the topic that we're discussing today. Gail?
I want to echo what you're saying that while I wish we were wonderful here in Canada, we're just not. I mean, I was just reading an article before we came on. I didn't have a chance to read it in full detail, but a young black man in Brampton who was tased and then shot by the police, and he was the person who called 911. And I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
my heart was breaking reading this. And I mean, this is, you know, as much as Canadians, often when we look at Americans, we look at, you know, we like to have a bit of a holier than thou attitude. But the reality is it's happening in our back door, and it's happening, you know, that article that you pointed out of just story after story that just is infuriating of the things that are happening. And I really appreciate what your point was, that we need to listen to people. This has
Mhm.
happened because too many people, like myself, have dismissed it and ignored it. Right. And this it happens because that's what the system wants to happen. It keeps these voices of dissension down. And that's what my post was this morning about LinkedIn, was that there are people who are posting on LinkedIn, oh, you know what, I don't want to hear this. LinkedIn is getting too political. This isn't the forum for it. But I think they're absolutely wrong. That's 100% the forum for it, because one, it's a human rights issue, and every single platform is the forum for it.
Exactly.
Every single platform is a forum for it. And the reason the system has continued is that people have said, this isn't the forum for it. This isn't the way to disagree. This isn't the way to protest, perpetuating the norm, perpetuating it as it was. And so we need to start to listen to people, to understand, just because this person doesn't have the experience that I've had, we need to understand and really get where they're coming from. And so for me, this has been a lot of listening, learning, you know, trying to understand. I mean, this is something that has been a passion and an interest for me for many years, but at all times, it's just trying to get where somebody is coming from with an open mind. And once you start to understand what different people's experiences are and how it's different than yours, and it's not your fault that you'll have a specific privilege, whatever that privilege may be, it's something that we need to understand that it exists. And that's actually been one of the things that I've noticed on LinkedIn and elsewhere, that recently it seems that more and more white people are coming to terms with understanding with what white privilege means and that it actually exists. I would be fascinated by a poll of white people of today versus 2 weeks ago of, do you think white privilege exists? Do you have it? And I would be willing to bet that needle has moved. And we need to keep on moving that needle by having these conversations in places like LinkedIn.
Exactly. Want to echo right back what you're saying is, if we don't talk about this, we won't have these results that we're seeing today, where a lot of people are now realizing their white privilege, right? Um, and that's hence why it's making it, LinkedIn is the perfect place to talk about this, is because, yeah, it's a professional platform, but we're not talking about things. What amazes me is when people, especially right now, when you're hearing, oh, this is not the place. I'm sorry, but you can post about your kids graduating from high school. You can post about, I've seen things on LinkedIn that I don't think should be on LinkedIn. Kids graduating. We can talk about COVID-19 and all that stuff. Kids getting married. Oh, I just got married. I went on this honeymoon. So all this stuff is okay to talk about. And you'll see numerous comments on these type of posts. But now we're talking about something real, which is making people uncomfortable. That the truth is, it's making people uncomfortable because
Good.
you either ignorant. I don't care. I don't care to be respectful anymore to people that are just plain out being ignorant about this topic. This topic has been going on for years. It took a man to die in the middle of the street to this movement to happen. And we should be talking about it. I don't care what color your skin is. If you face injustice, I think we should hear everybody, regardless of color of your skin, your religion, what background. Like I posted something about something that's actually happened to my community. I'm a Sikh. 1984, we had the most. I was only 4, so I can't act like I know what it was when it happened, and I lived in Canada, so I had a privilege too. Born and raised in Canada, I can't imagine the people that were in India, in Punjab, which is the Sikh majority of Sikhs live in Punjab. The terrorist attack, I call it terrorist because it was a terrorist. You try to eliminate a religion to its core being, kill thousands of people. I spent the entire week educating myself on these matters, though I had a good source that lived through it, told me about stories when growing up. But even people have issues about this. And it's like, okay, listen, I have every right to voice injustice that till this day is not given to people living in India. Poor families have suffered and been suffering for 36 years. Just listen. Just listen. And you know what? Guess what? All these matters, I'm going to tie it back to the workplace. If you are biased, hence why we have, I don't care what anybody, I'm just being very candid today. And I just don't care to cover things up anymore. We have the most biased, racist people working in companies.
Look, we all have biases. That's the thing, is the reality is we all have biases. It's whether or not we recognize them, we check them, we understand them. I mean, everybody has these biases, and I would recommend everybody go to the Harvard website where they have a test where you understand what your biases are. And they are astounding, because as hard as we work, as hard as we try, that, to try to unravel them, they are hard baked into our systems, and that's why we have to work. That's why we have to work against them. It's really important, and that's also, though, why we need to understand that these conversations belong on LinkedIn. These are human issues. We can't suppress these issues, because the reality is that anybody who is uncomfortable because these issues are political or they don't want to hear about it is demonstrating a privilege right there, because they have the ability to turn it off. They have the ability to walk through society and not worry about Black Lives Matter, whereas Black people don't have that ability. Brown people don't have that ability. And so the comfort of being able to shy away from it is privilege.
I would say, I'm going to throw in a different viewpoint here. I'm a brown person. I would say I still have more privilege than Black people. Me and my friend were having this open conversation about this, is that as a brown person, my family didn't sit me down and said, hey, if a cop pulls you over, you got to do X, Y, and Z. They didn't say this to my brothers. I didn't have this conversation, but Black people are having these conversations as early as, I don't even know how old the kid is when they're having these conversations. I didn't. I don't know anybody in my family has had these conversations. We've never been brought up like that by Black people. And I recognize this as a brown person, that, I still have more privilege than Black people. And hence why we should be supporting this movement. And I was reading this, and also tired of people writing comments and other people's posts that are talking about Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. No kidding, Sherlock. Nobody said.
Not what we're talking about.
Nobody said that no lives matter here. Of course, all lives matter here, but the greater risk is exposed to Black people. Let's just face the reality here. I'm a color person, and if I can face the reality that I have more privilege than Black people, what's wrong with you guys? Like, why can't people just admit it? Yeah, I've been pulled over once, and at the time, I actually never realized there was a what is it called? Profiling.
Mm-hmm.
When it happened, I didn't realize it, but afterwards, I was like, wait a minute. He only pulled me over because he checked my license plate to realize, like, my license plate was fine, but he ran my license plate in the system. His system, while stopped in a red light. And then he pulled me over that because my insurance expired and I guess I forgot to renew it, something like that, and gave me a ticket. I don't know if that's racial profiling, but at the time I didn't care, whatever. But when I started hearing about racial profiling, I'm like, was I part of it? Because yeah, when can a cop just pull you over for no reason and give you a ticket because they happen to be standing behind you in a red light and ran your license plate? Like, what made this person run my license plate? Because I was driving an SUV? I don't know, right? And now that whole incident keeps playing in my head. But fine, I'm a female. My skin color is light. I am brown, but I'm not black. And I'm tired of anybody that's sitting there thinking that skin colors don't have privileges. Because even in Indian community, there's so much colorism is when you have privileges based on your color, tone of your color, skin tone color. So if you're darker, even in South Asian community, if you're darker, people don't like you. You're considered ugly, basically. So girls at young age, thank God I didn't have this experience because my parents didn't raise me like this. But yeah, there's people in my family that make some comments. You're considered pretty just because if you have a light skin tone. You're considered ugly if you're a darker shade. In India, you have, someone brought this up in my network too about this, and it made me start thinking, I'm like, that's so true. In India, they sell Fair and Lovely cream, which is a bleaching of your skin to make it whiter. Right? So colorism exists even here. Same with Black people. There's colorism even in Black shades, right? Because there's different types of skin tone. And we do this unknowingly. So I just want to tell people that, just because you don't experience something, let's not dismiss people who are facing things. And Rodad's saying, yeah, colorism is a whole other issue. Exactly. Colorism is a whole different issue, which a lot of people don't understand. And the only ones that understand are the ones who go through it, right? Because we're color people. And I had this other discussion. You can be Italian, but if your skin looks white, no one's going to know you're Italian. I'm sorry. I can't tell the difference. I grew up around Italians. As a kid, I just thought they were white. And that's not me being ignorant. That's me being truthful, honest. I know
that's how they present themselves. That's the reality, is regardless of where your background is, right? I mean, my background is I'm Jewish, my mom is Israeli, but I present myself as white. Walking through a neighborhood, people aren't going to look at me as ethnic or worried that I'm in a situation. So that's ultimately what I am. Regardless of how I feel, however I was raised, that's how I'm seen, and that's where the privilege comes in. That I can drive through a nice neighborhood in a nice car, and I won't have a police officer wonder why I'm doing that, pulling me over, asking me for my license, looking to see where I am. I'm just not going to experience that.
I want to echo here. It's because of the skin color of your skin. We're talking about color of skin here, right? And your skin color is white. My skin color isn't white. So again, but then if we throw a Black person in the mix, both of us will have more privileges than the Black person.
But I want to go back to what you were saying though before, which was about the listening, because I think that is key. I am alone in my bubble. I am comfortable in my bubble until I listen to somebody else's experience. And then upon listening to your experiences, the prejudice that you faced as a woman, the prejudice you faced as a brown woman, I can either sit comfortably in my bubble and dismiss you, or B, sit uncomfortably in my learning and listen to you. And for too long, we've sat as a society comfortable not listening to each other.
Yeah.
That's where we've been, instead of understanding, you know what? This is what your experience is like, and it's different than mine. And it's not my fault you've had that experience, but I do want to understand. I do want to understand. Rodette said it perfectly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen to understand, not listen to respond.
I don't know
Perfect.
why people feel the need to respond. Why can't people just listen?
Because our brains have ego, and we like to put our point on things, and we like to state our opinion on things. But at some point, we need to understand where our opinion isn't the point, and we have to understand where it's time to listen to somebody else. And that's part of where the power structure has been, that white people haven't had to sit in that discomfort listening to somebody else. It's been easy. It's an easy not to, and we should not make it easy not to. That's why we need to continue to have a conversation on LinkedIn and other platforms, because it shouldn't be easy to squash that conversation. It shouldn't be comfortable being racist.
I think also the reason we should be having these conversations is because we as organizations need to look internally, take a look internally. Do your organization truly has equal opportunities for every single person in your organization, regardless of their background, regardless of the color of their skin? Because that's where those organizations need to wake up, right? And I hope they are. And hence, if we voice these concerns, we will be able, maybe, right? The hope is
that's the point.
we're voicing things because we're hoping for change, right? We want change. It's not even hope anymore. We want change. And that can only happen. People are forgetting that our majority of our lives are spent at work. So if racism exists outside of work, guess what? It exists inside of the work. I don't understand why people can't connect the dots, because in the end, we're human beings. If I'm a racist person, how are you going to know I'm racist? Right? If I'm a racist person, I'm bringing it I'm HR. Okay? Just racist in HR. Oh my God. Like, I'll be the worst HR person in that company because I'm racist. And
there are plenty
if
of them
I'm
out there.
racist, let's say black.
And hey, let's not kid ourselves. There are
Yeah.
plenty of racist HR people out there, because you know what? If you're willing to hide your head in the sand and hide away from this, you're promoting the racist system. You're promoting the racist company to allow the people to behave in a way that are causing your people of color pain. And you're causing your company pain ultimately, which is secondary to all of the human pain that you're causing initially.
And you're right, because there are people in positions that you can't be racist. I don't think you should be racist, period. But the truth is, we are racist people, and then it's hard when you have it in HR, because my profession, I respect it. I hold it to high standard. I hold it to highly regarded profession. One profession, I feel like there shouldn't be racism involved. And if you're racist, you shouldn't be HR. Just like teachers, I was just so disturbed by reading that article. I just don't understand how teachers were doing this. We can't be racist in companies, especially HR, because we're dealing with people. We're the first point of contact. Imagine doctors being racist. Imagine nurses being racist and say, "Oh, I'm not touching you because you're X." Right? And that's how I feel about HR, that we're the first response. We're the first point of contact. We're the ones who hire people. If we're racist, we're bringing it into our work. We're human beings. I don't care what anybody says. If you're racist, you're bringing it to work too. HR, no HR.
You're not gonna shut it down. You may try to hide it, but it will come out in the form of microaggressions. It will.
Exactly.
There's no doubt it will still come out. It will still cause pain. It will just be comfortable for you to do it because you think you're hiding it.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna sit there and act like no one's ever. It's hard to do a job too when I'm going to flip it back to a different story. Now, I think someone accused me, because you're treating me like this, I'm black. And oh my God, that's where I draw the line. I'm like, no, I'm not treating you any different. It was a whole different incident, a disciplinary incident where it was warranted because of the individual's behavior, but he made it about color, and it wasn't color. So I get the both sides of the stories, that sometimes it does happen where a person may just act like they're being the victim of a disciplinary because of color, but as an individual, it's your job to explain that it's not about color. It's about X, Y, and Z. This is my investigation, and so on. I've been accused of it, but I wasn't being racist. I was just doing my job, and the fact finding came to be that this person needed a disciplinary action. But again, there's two sides that happen. But again, these people, it's not even these people, this person who was Black that felt like he had to play the race card, I understand where he was coming from. I didn't get pissed off. Yeah, I was a little bit taken back because I've never had someone play the race card with me. I'm colored, right? But I understood where he was coming from. And I get it, right? Like, I get it when you have been dealing with racism your entire life, that your instant reaction to something, when something negative is happening or someone's treating you differently, your first instinct is going to be the race card. You don't mean to do it. You don't mean to do it, but it is your mechanism because you've been dealing with it, right? You've been dealing with racism your entire life. I can't even imagine like how exhausting that is. If both of us are feeling exhausting by the whole week and reading and mentally disturbed by it, just imagine the people who suffer through it.
Mm-hmm.
How is
and that's why it's such a problem when people don't want to hear it, when they try to push it away, because they don't want that discomfort on them. They want to push it. It's so minorities and Black people in particular in North America have been treated this way and been uncomfortable for years, and all of the discomfort has been pushed on them. And now we're asking more and more people to accept the discomfort and understand that, you know what, I have a place in this. I have a role. I have a responsibility in this. But I'm glad you brought up Suresh's point, because I want to highlight his story here, that he was treated, still badly, still being a second-class citizen because of his color, because of his looks, and likely in Toronto because of accent. That's just how it often is.
Yeah. Also, I want to add here is it's also because he's an immigrant.
Yeah, and that's just and people are treated as lesser. People are treated as lesser, and it saddens me that it's he says that he went to Montreal and faced it with French people.
Oh yeah, I believe that, and now I'm probably being biased here too when I say I believe that, because yeah.
And so a citizen for 15 years, a person who's lived in the country long enough to be a citizen for 15 years, goes somewhere within Canada and gets treated with racism. People who are then going back to the Peel story, people who were born here, born Canadian citizens. I'm not a born Canadian citizen, but born Canadian citizens.
I'm born
in the Peel district who are getting treated with this. And it needs to change, and that's why we've come to this point.
I want to talk about this, about being born here, right? And I'm just gonna. It is ignorance. You know how many times I've been asked where you're from? How many times people have made comments or remarks about, "Oh, you speak good English. Where did you learn it?" Yeah, I'm born and raised here. Oh, I had somebody that said to me, "You're Indian? You're too." Your skin color is not brown. I'm like, yeah, we come in all shades of color. Dark, light, brown, white. I go, my sister-in-law is even whiter than me. It was just like, and you get immune to it, but eventually it starts getting to you.
Is it an immunity, or is it a toughness to deal with the pain? That and I ask this from a genuine curiosity. I don't know. I haven't experienced it.
I'm 40 now, and I'm just tired now that the first reaction someone has is where you're from. I used to, you know what? I used to say Canada. And then like, no, where are you from? I'm like, Canada. No, where are you from? I'm like, Canada, right? I'm born and raised in Canada. I'm like, oh, you mean where my parents are from? My ethnic background? Why don't you just ask what's your ethnic background? Why do you need to ask me where I'm from? Yeah, if
And
you're gonna
that's
ask me where I'm from Canada. I'm born and raised in Toronto. What else do you want me to say? But so I think when I was around 20-ish, I adopted this where when someone asks me where I'm from, I just Canada. Where you from? Canada?
that's the answer.
Yeah. And
That's
then
the answer.
the shock on their faces. I'm like, yeah, so you want to know my ethnic background? Yeah. I'll go, so why don't you just ask me that, right? So the ignorance, it's also not knowing they're being ignorant about it. My father came in 71. And even till this day, I'm asked, where are you from? You speak really good English. And then someone even said to me, yeah, the color of my skin tone.
And these are the microaggressions. This is exactly what I'm talking about. These subtle acts of exclusion that are caused by people who are ignorant, caused by people who don't even necessarily realize they have these biases, have these racist thoughts in their head. And then they ask these questions, putting the discomfort on the other person, on the marginalized community, instead of having the discomfort on themselves to learn, to educate themselves, to understand why I shouldn't walk up to a black person and ask to touch their hair, is something that there are a lot of adult white people that don't understand that don't understand why they shouldn't.
You know, talking about that, growing up, I had black friends. I never asked to touch their hair. I never get why people need to touch their hair.
I'll admit I made that mistake at age 13. I did. I made that mistake at age 13.
Okay.
I had a friend. I did. It was a texture thing. I made the mistake. It was honestly a mistake, and I obviously shouldn't have done it. But I admit that I did that. I had a friend. I was curious about it. It was a different texture than mine.
Yeah,
and I like different textures, so that was the curiosity, and that was the mistake I made. He didn't say anything about it, but that's not on him to have said anything about it. But I learned eventually not to do that.
And going back to like born and raised here, other people from different ethnic backgrounds are born and raised here, and constantly being asked the same questions that I've been asked. I've been fortunate enough that also growing up, I lived in a neighborhood. I went to schools that were diverse. Unlike like my upbringing is different in the sense that because of this area we lived in, we had all type of ethnic backgrounds. In a very young age, I was well versed with all different types of ethnic backgrounds. My friends were all different types of ethnic backgrounds. And some people are not fortunate to have that given the area they live in. But going back to, and the other thing is, oh, yeah, I love Indian food. Great. So what? That doesn't mean you're not racist. Doesn't mean that you are not biased towards it just because you like Indian food or you like Jamaican food or you like this food or that.
I have a black friend.
Or you have a black friend or you have an Indian friend.
It doesn't preclude me from being racist.
No. And I still remember when I was working, I was in university working in duty free at the airport. Till this day, and I can't put a finger on it, why till this day, I still remember one of my coworkers' comment. She went to an Indian wedding, a Sikh wedding. So in Sikh temple, you have to remove your shoes. Socks and your shoes have to be removed before you enter into our temple, right? There's a shoe area, you take it off. So she went to the wedding, came back, and I'm pretty sure she realized she knew I was Indian. Maybe she didn't know I was Sikh. But she came back and was telling a story, and she was making fun of Indian women that were at the temple and how ugly their feet were. And till this day, it bothers me the fact that she was ignorant to make a comment like that, not knowing the facts that every culture is different. And in South Asian culture, especially coming from India, which is not a rich country, there's plenty of poor people, and emphasis isn't given on nail salons like it is here in North America. So she made comment about their feet that till this day, it's still in my head that she made that comment. And I'm born and raised here, so I take care of my feet. But till this day, it bothers me that I'm extra taking care of my feet because I don't want another person that is not from my culture making a comment about my feet because I'm Indian. So these little things stick with you consciously, subconsciously. You're making decisions based on other people's comments without realizing it. So, like at the time it didn't bother me. It didn't, like I probably told her what was happening. But the fact that till this day, 15, 16 years later, I still remember this comment. It's probably more than 15 years. Obviously, it's bothering me and I'm taking extra care of my feet.
And she probably forgot the question 5 minutes later. She had the privilege, the comfort of asking you the question that caused you such pain.
No, I don't think. No, she wasn't asking. She was actually making fun of.
Oh, sorry. She was making fun of. So
yeah,
she was making fun of people.
This day,
and within 5 minutes after, she had no idea. She didn't even remember it. Whereas it impacted your life to the point that 15 plus years later. So would you put up Rodette's most recent comment? Because this is, I think, a really important one. Look, she was the only black trainer at a team, and anytime she'd change her hair, every single time a manager would ask who she is and why she was in the trainer area.
That is so. I'm sorry, but how does someone?
The amount of disrespect to not even know what her face looks like, that is that dismissive of her as a human being is in. So this is what gets me when people say this doesn't belong on LinkedIn. This was a work experience that this woman had. This is a work experience that this woman had. One aspect of racism that she's dealt with in her life, and this one happened at work. And this is the kind of thing that if we start to have more conversations, if we make this woman uncomfortable about that fact and start to treat Rodette like a human, then we'll be able to get to a better place where we're not putting our ignorance onto other people. We're not causing pain for somebody 15 years later that they're worrying about their feet because you don't know when to shut your mouth.
In my case, and the Rodette's probably out there. First of all, Rodette, so sorry that you had to go through that experience because I don't think anybody should.
No.
And going back to Gil's remarks on the situation that you faced, how do you not know your team's face? And you know what? Girls change their hair all the time. It's not even a black thing. It's a woman thing. I changed my hair. I can show you guys pictures of my hair. Yes, now it frequently looks the same. But growing up, when I hit 20, I was changing my hair color, I think every other 2 months. My hair, I chopped it off like here, grow it, chop it back off. Every different month, it was different color. So I'm a different person because I go to work and I have a different look. But going back to you, that means the person didn't even recognize your face because your face didn't change.
No. That's look, we've been doing this for what, almost 3 months now, and you've probably had at least 3 different hairstyles in different videos that we've done, just in different ways. You've done different things with your hairstyles
because my hair is naturally not straight. So yesterday I straightened it. It's getting longer. Yes, good point. I've changed my hair so many times. Gil, did you not recognize me?
You know what? I recognize your background. That's how I figured it out. I wasn't sure. I didn't know this, but it's a serious subject. It really is. And like you said, I'm sorry that Rodette has had to live through this and has had to deal with that kind of racism. And that's why I know for me, I believe it's important that we continue to have this conversation. We don't let people shy away from this conversation.
I think
we should probably wrap up soon because we're almost 10 minutes over, but we'll maybe have a part 2 at some point.
I do have a point there because I want to add another point in there is having, Rodette's laughing, having ethnic background, ethnic name, and I do, and sometimes it amazes me, especially when you're calling Amazon. I'm not throwing Amazon under the bus, but recently I had this experience where I was talking to a manager at Amazon and she pronounced my name incorrectly. So I'm like, hey, it's pronounced Gurpreet. she's pronounced it incorrectly again, and she just went into Miss Men. I'm like, no, please do not disrespect me and just go straight to Miss Men because it's easier to pronounce my last name. I'm teaching you, so take the time and learn how to pronounce my name. I'm teaching you. At least I'm like, I recognize not everyone can pronounce my name, but when I teach it, a lot of people get it. Then it's like, oh, it's not that
I get how
hard.
you don't. I honestly, for me, I like, because we discussed it the first conversation we had, because I'm very sensitive to that because people mispronounce my name all the time growing up.
And
So I'm always very sensitive to that. So I asked you, I'm like, Gurpreet, and you're like, yeah, like, and then you said to me that people mispronounce. I'm like, how? It's exactly what it looks like.
No, yeah, I had an English teacher, okay, in high school that used to pronounce my name Gurpreet. Gurpreet. And my sister, she used to call her Prabjit. Her name's Prabjit, and my name is Gurpreet, right? So when you've been dealing with this since birth or since you started school, you kind of like, it's sad, but you can't become immune to it. So you take the time to teach people to pronounce your name. No, it's pronounced Gurpreet. Like I went to Cuba few years ago, and this individual said it the best way. He actually put the pieces together, and when I was saying Gurpreet, he's like, Preet, oh, Preet like pretty. And I was like, oh, I should be using that analogy too. Preet like pretty, right? So I actually started using it, and people now, it clicks really fast to people. But
phonics are apparently really hard. Sorry, I'm just reading Ronet's comment.
But some people, I get it. Some people can't. And I just want, my last ending point is just on the names, is take the time. Don't be ignorant. Just take the time to pronounce someone's name, and don't bypass candidates just because you can't pronounce their names. Because I know tons of people out there that are in the recruiting field and HR that bypasses candidates just because they can't pronounce the name, so they don't call them.
Oh, I instead just had very like uncomfortable first 30 seconds of trying really hard on a person's name, usually getting it wrong, apologizing, and asking them to pronounce it correctly. But that's just me. But again, having a name that people mispronounced growing up, it's easier to have that conversation. I really do. I find it's sometimes you can commiserate with people because, look, I was a high schooler that every teacher I had called me Jill on the first day. And so being a 15-year-old boy being called Jill on the first day of class was never fun, right? So that's where, yeah, it's Gil. So, but that was my frame of reference for it. So I'm always sensitive to that.
I can pronounce it because in my culture, we have a last name by Gil. But even when I talk to you for something like, hey, how do you pronounce your name? Is it Gil? Right? Because in case it was pronounced differently.
Yeah, no, but you check.
Right? California has the Spanish where J is silent.
But it's more of the French thing, I think, than why people call it, because there's Gilles, the name in French, so that's likely why they've thought it was Gil. But it's all good. It's all good. We'll probably pick up this topic again at some point. I mean, there's a lot to be talked about. And the reality is that we need to keep this conversation going, not just now, not just a month from now, but it needs to continue. It needs to stay beyond when the media spotlight is on it. And that's something that's important. So I think we should sign off, but thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Really appreciate it.
And my ending remarks is just listen. Don't dismiss people's experiences just because they're different from you. You're uncomfortable, that's fine. But educate yourself, right? Listen to the stories and just show empathy. And let's all commit to change, because it's about time we start changing organizations and changing ourselves, recognizing our own biases. And in that regard, we're going to close our segment today. And we'll see you guys on Thursday. Let us know if this timing was great. Any topics you want us to cover, please reach out to Gil or me. You have a choice between two of us. And you can let us know what topics you want to cover. We do keep an eye on things that are happening on LinkedIn, and we try to pick up topics based on that as well. So thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys had a great weekend. And let's start the week on a great note, which is empathy. recognizing people's different experiences, and let's work together to have a better change in all organizations so future generations can benefit from it. So thank you, good evening, and we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks all.
Bye.